Hey everyone, welcome back to Daily Devotions Serving Challenge. 40 days. We're on day 3, on our way in our journey. And so we've covered the introductory materials here in these first 5 days as we go from attitude of serving to availability in serving. And day 3 today, we're speaking towards the action of serving. And within that action, Zach brought forth, the first part, kind of the antithesis of action, and that is inaction, or actually a different word that he brought forth is regret. And as soon as I was reading those first couple pages, as he says, something could pop into your head. And there's a couple things that popped into my head and want to help lead you in that kind of reflection of regret. One of my regrets is early on in my college career. I was an athlete. I would play basketball, and in those first couple years, as I stepped onto the court and found out that there's other basketball players in this world at a higher level in college, I didn't see much time on the court. And one of the biggest regrets that I have was that I stepped back from that. I just kind of reacted to that in a way of saying, well, okay, I don't need to try harder, work harder. And there was this kind of setback. And for me to go into the different places within college life, rather than the place that I needed to work harder, prove myself more to the coaches, I just kind of stepped back. And it wasn't until my junior year, end of sophomore year, junior year, that it started to click. And it was through some words that I had with my assistant coach of being able just to give more time, give more action towards the next level of basketball. I wonder what it would be. I wonder what it would have been if I just tried harder in those first couple of years, and what that would have meant differently for me in my basketball career in college. While I have that regret, I'll get a little bit deeper with you. 2019, it absolutely popped into my head. The regret of not just making a call, not really checking in with one of my family members. My brother-in-law, he was swimming in something that was heavy. Just didn't know how heavy that was until I got the call one night that he had taken his life. That brings a lot of regret. Loving my brother-in-law, knowing the situation that he was in, the heaviness that he was in, not fully knowing it because, I have that regret of inaction. Didn't pick up the phone. Didn't call. Didn't check in. And so there's sometimes it just brings me back towards, could I have done anything differently? Could I have maybe changed the trajectory of not getting that phone call that night? I've come to the conclusion that no, and a lot of prayer and a lot of petitions and a lot of surroundings and being able to have the conversation with family as well. But regret? Yeah, we live with regret. And I love the saying here because I just think it's true and it's honest. It says, our deepest regrets are almost always our regrets of inaction. Inaction. Not so with Jesus. Not so with Jesus. It doesn't talk about Jesus regretting. It just talks about Jesus' action and his purpose and his focused purpose as he lowered himself. As in that next page on page 34, it speaks of that Philippians 2, right? The Apostle Paul continued to describe the descent of Jesus, that his action was different than ours. Not one of inaction, but one of action, that he wasn't trying to gain influence by climbing up the ladder in life. Rather, he lowered himself to become a servant. Hear these words from Philippians chapter 2. Taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself. Just looking at those three words and actually meditating on those three words, even just this morning, he humbled himself. That's an incredible action. Humbling, being able to walk in humility. And what an action that changes things around us. To take the action this day into being a servant, to walk in humility in our relationships rather than trying to get the great influence. Taking action in humility. The way of Jesus is the way of action, but the way of action of humility and servanthood. And he brings up a scripture that I really want to walk with you in, open up in our Bibles to Mark chapter 10. The way of action. There was a couple disciples that were in and amongst Jesus' ministry, seeing what he was doing and just really astonished by what he was doing. And so they just kind of stepped forward. They took action, but they took action in a human nature way, in our sinful nature way. They wanted to prop themselves up. They didn't take the way of Jesus of humility, but rather they wanted the way of influence. And it tried to influence Jesus in his action. They wanted to actually have selfish desires of what it would look like for them to be great. So that also teaches us a lesson as before we go into this Mark chapter 10, beginning at verse 35. May our actions in the day be of humility rather than selfish greatness. We all fall into that all the time, right? In my inaction in college, it was whether I would have been great or not, better or not in the position, what that would look like for me. Even in the deeper sense of my brother-in-law, it just kind of came back to what could I have done? How could I have changed things? And it comes back to this kind of selfish desire of greatness, betterness, rather than humility. And Jesus points right to it. And so if you need the point, here's the point in Mark chapter 10. Two disciples that take action, are bold in coming forth. It seems like they're not going to regret, but they do regret coming to Jesus with this boldness. Verse 35 says in chapter 10 of Mark, Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. I mean, he's doing it for others, cleaning or cleansing people from their demons. He's healing people. He's raising people from the dead. Man, we're close with him. We haven't received anything from him. So we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Whoa. Jesus simply asks, what do you want me to do for you? He asks. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. We want to be great. What action they took. And Jesus said, you don't know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with? We can, they answered. And Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. See how he turned it to humility? These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. That's not my lane. That's the Father's lane. I'm going to stay in my lane and purpose and take action in what I have come to do. And so he expands upon this. When the 10 heard about this action that the disciples had taken, they became indignant with James and John. They were upset. Why would you do something like that? And Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Not so with you. Just puts us right into day 3 of the serving challenge. Not so with you. Yeah, you need to take action. I don't want you to have regrets of inaction, but not so with you. To lord it and have authority. But rather, the way of Jesus is the way of action. But his action is one of humility and servanthood. Listen to what he says. Not so with you. You're going to look different. Instead, Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man, who is the greatest, the perfect, the most amazing reality in our world, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. To give his life as a ransom for many. As we reflect upon regrets this day, may Jesus' action of humility and servanthood be loud. Speak over our regrets. That he came to serve. He came to give his life as a ransom for you. Not to make you great in this world or influencing or authoritative into this world. No. For us to just reflect upon, to be a servant this day. To be humble this day. And so the way of Jesus is the way of action. But what type of action? Humble servanthood. What a great challenge for us this day. And we'll get into it in days 20 through 26 as it's just the overview. But taking action in the way of Jesus and being a servant and walking in humility. Have a blessed day as you walk with Jesus, the servant who keeps serving you so you can serve one another. Take care.